Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6 p.m. Cairo local time, and this is the Channel 2 News. I'm Henny Saif. Coming up next are the headlines making the news today. President Sisi meets with Kuwaiti Prime Minister over bilateral cooperation and regional developments. Lebanon's Hariri announces a raft of economic reforms following protests that fueled calls for the government's resignation. And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson seeks support from MPs for a new divorce deal with the European Union. Welcome back. The news in details. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi today said Egypt is launching persistent and balanced endeavors to end the current stalemate in negotiations over Ethiopia's Renaissance Dam, saying Egypt is seeking an agreement that achieves the interests of Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia together. The remark was made as the president received foreign delegations participating at the Cairo Water Week. In its second version, the week was launched on Sunday to discuss ways of responding to water scarcity. The five-day conference is organized by the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation under the auspices of President el-Sisi. And President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi today met with visiting Kuwaiti Prime Minister Sheikh Jaber al-Mubarak al-Hamad al-Sabah. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said the president hailed the strong Egyptian-Kuwaiti ties that hold a special status and said he is interested in developing close and distinguished bilateral cooperation on all fronts. The Kuwaiti Prime Minister conveyed a message to President el-Sisi from Emir of Kuwait Sabah al-Ahmad al-Jaber al-Sabah that focused on the historic relations binding the two Arab countries. The message also hailed Egypt's keen interest in consolidating Arab solidarity and pushing joint Arab action forward. The meeting also discussed regional developments, with the president insisting on Gulf security being key to Egypt's national security. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli also held talks with his Kuwaiti counterpart, Sheikh Jaber al-Mubarak al-Hamad al-Sabah, that were later joined by officials from the two countries. The talks between the two sides focused on ways to boost bilateral cooperation as well as regional and international issues of mutual concern. Following their talks, the Prime Minister of Egypt and Kuwait witnessed the signing of a number of cooperation agreements, which included a framework agreement to finance the second phase of the Sinai Development Program with $1 billion over the upcoming 3 years. Another memorandum of understanding for funding a Sharm el-Sheikh tunnel to the tune of $86 million. A third agreement was signed for encouraging direct investment between Egypt's Ministry of Investment and Kuwait's Direct Investment Authority. Parliament Speaker Dr. Ali Abdel Al asserted Egypt's government and people's appreciation to Kuwaiti Emir Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmad al-Jaber al-Sabah for his pivotal role in supporting Egypt and Arab issues. The Speaker of the House of Representatives' remarks came during his meeting with Kuwaiti Prime Minister Sheikh Jaber al-Mubarak al-Hamad al-Sabah. The meeting reviewed the historic relations between both countries in all fields, on top of which is parliamentary cooperation. The Kuwaiti Prime Minister also praised joint distinguished ties linking Egypt and Kuwait over decades. And Commander of the Naval Forces, Vice Admiral Ahmed Khalid Hassan Qaddoura, said that Egyptian naval forces are capable of confronting all present or anticipated challenges facing the country as part of the armed forces' overall plans. The commander remarks came during a press conference marking the 52nd anniversary of the Egyptian Navy. On October 21st of 1967, the naval forces managed to sink the Israeli destroyer Eilat at the start of the war of attrition that lasted until 1970. The Israeli warship was the first in history to be sunk by ship-to-ship missiles. The incident followed the entry of Eilat into the Egyptian territorial waters in the Mediterranean off coast of the Sinai Peninsula that was occupied by Israel on June 5th of the same year. The operation contributed in reinstating confidence in the armed forces and its capabilities. Marking the African Human Rights Day, the Foreign Ministry asserted Egypt is interested in addressing the issue of African refugees and internally displaced people. Addressing the celebration, spokesman of the Foreign Ministry, Councillor Ahmed Hafiz, said that Egypt opens its doors to its brethren from African countries facing conflicts or crises. He also said that Egypt is hosting many refugees and exerting the utmost effort to merge them into the Egyptian society and provide them with the basic services they need.
يمر العالم بمفترق طرق لتستمر مصر كما كانت دوما ركيزة أساسية لاستعادة الأمن والاستقرار في الشرق الأوسط. ولا يسعني إلا أن أؤكد رفض مصر للتدخل الأجنبي في الشؤون العربية، فقد آن الأوان أن تستعاد مؤسسات الدولة الليبية وتقوم مصر بدور نشط لجمع الفرقاء الليبيين. إن نزيف الدم في سوريا وغياب الأفق السياسي أمر لم يعد مقبولا استمراره، فالمطلوب واضح: وحدة سوريا وسلامتها الإقليمية. لا تدخر مصر جهدا لدعم وحدة اليمن وسلامته الإقليمية. وفي وسط تلك التحديات التي يموج بها النظام الدولي، إلا أن مصر استطاعت أن تحافظ على استقرارها وسط محيط إقليمي شديد الاضطراب في ضوء ارتباط الأمن القومي العربي بما فيه أمن الخليج العربي بأمن مصر. على البشرية أن تستعيد جوهر إنسانيتها والوصول إلى عالم أكثر أمنا ورخاء لأجيالنا القادمة.
Welcome back. Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri said the cabinet on Monday approved a raft of economic reforms and agreed on the 2020 budget after growing protests fueled calls for the government's resignation. Speaking in a press conference after a cabinet meeting, the premier said the measures were not merely an attempt to quell demonstrations. Hariri said that he supported the demonstrators' call for early elections, adding that their voice is the only one that decides what they want. Lebanon's President Michel Aoun said on Monday that protests gripping the country showed people's pain, but that accusing all politicians of corruption equally was not fair. Aoun added that the government must at least start by lifting banking secrecy from current and future ministers. The president said during a cabinet session that what is happening in the streets expresses the people's pain, but generalizing corruption charges against everyone carries big injustice. Kremlin aide Yuri Yushakov told reporters in Moscow that Russia's President Vladimir Putin and Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan will discuss Turkey's operation in Syria during their meeting on Tuesday. This comes as a 5-day truce in the Turkish operation expires tomorrow. We have more in this report by Minad Dessouy.
Up along the border, if you will.
U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said on Monday that the Pentagon is considering keeping some U.S. troops near oil fields in northeastern Syria, alongside Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, to help deny oil to Daesh militants. The announcement came as U.S. troops were crossing into Iraq as part of a border withdrawal from Syria ordered by President Donald Trump. That decision has prompted a rush by Turkey and by the Damascus government and its ally Russia to fill the vacuum left by the Americans. Turkey had launched an offensive in northeastern Syria, seeking to set up a safe zone as a buffer against Kurdish Syrian militia, the main component of this SDF, which is considered as terrorists. However, Turkey is observing a pause of its offensive for 5 days under a deal with Washington. The truce expired date on Tuesday, just after Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan is set to discuss next steps in the region at a meeting in Russia with President Vladimir Putin. Erdogan has said Ankara will resume its assault in Syria. When the deadline expires on Tuesday if the SDF has not pulled back from its proposed zone, which spans much of the border. On Sunday, the SDF said they had withdrawn from the border town of Ras Al-Ain under the U.S. brokered ceasefire deal, but a spokesman for Turkish-backed Syrian rebels said the withdrawal was not yet complete. Meanwhile, Syrian army were deploying in Raqqa province following the U.S. withdrawal, raising a flag on military base deserted by the U.S. troops. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu was quoted as saying that Moscow hopes its coordination with the United States and Turkey will help security and stability in the region.
Sudan's Prime Minister named a commission to investigate a raid on a sit-in in June in which security forces killed dozens near the Defense Ministry in Khartoum. The commission will have broad powers to summon witnesses, including officials, and will be given access to official documents, security reports, and medical records. The commission will be headed by human rights lawyers Nabil Adib. It will include senior security officers as well as other lawyers. The commission is supposed to finish its work in 3 months and can be granted one-month extensions, provided it submits progress reports. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson prepared today to make a second attempt to ram his EU divorce deal through Parliament and avoid the political damage of delaying Brexit next week. British lawmakers dealt a dramatic blow to Johnson's Brexit plan at the weekend by refusing to give their backing to his revised withdrawal agreement until the legislation needed to ratify it has passed. His foes are now forging new alliances and trying to attach amendments that could either force Johnson to accept closer trade ties or abandon the deal and accept a third delay this year. The option of extending Brexit past the latest October 31st deadline is now in the hands of the 27 remaining EU member states. These were the political news. Now it's time for the business updates, where Egypt's stock market plunged today, being influenced by local corporate and Arab investor sell-offs. The market capital for listed companies lost 2.3 billion Egyptian pounds, closing at 715.5 billion. Benchmark EGX 30 index dipped 0.4% above the 14.178-point mark. The medium-capped EGX 70 index and the broader EGX 100 index both fell 0.1%. The Lebanese economy has been hit by political paralysis amid a wave of ongoing anti-government protests. In particular, Lebanon's dollar-denominated sovereign bonds suffered hefty losses today, following sharp drops at the weekend. Some bonds sank to record lows, with losses amounting to 4 cents at 5.7% since protests began 5 days ago. Economic woes have been compounded by strains in the financial system that accumulated as capital flows into the country has slowed down. These capital inflows are needed to finance the state deficit and the needs of its import-dependent economy. In commodities, oil prices held steady today, recouping some early losses as investors took stock of global economic pressures that could impact oil demand. London's Brent crude oil futures, the benchmark used to price international oils, was down 1% to $58.8 a barrel by late morning. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures fell 0.2% to $53.66 a barrel. Meanwhile, gold, often considered as safe haven asset, was little change at $1,490 an ounce.